Chapter 12, the significance of sacrifice. Okay. So the first paragraph is about one page. Somebody has to read it. Tarika usually comes for Gita. So Tarika, do you have the text? I don't think she's.
Rangada, I don't have the text.
Okay. So
I don't have the text.
Okay, then you can't read.
Rangada, I'm reading.
Okay, very good, Archana. Go ahead.
The significance of sacrifice. The Gita's theory of sacrifice is stated in two separate passages. One we find in the 3rd chapter, another in the 4th. The first gives it in language which might, taken by itself, seem to be speaking only of the ceremonial sacrifice. The second, interpreting that into the sense of a large philosophical symbolism, transforms at once its whole significance and raises it to a plane of high psychological and spiritual truth. Inverted commas, with sacrifice, the Lord of creatures, of all created creatures, and said, by this shall you bring forth fruits or offspring. Let this be your milker of desires. Foster by this the gods, and let the gods foster you. Fostering each other, you shall attain to the supreme good. Fostered by sacrifice, the gods shall give you desired enjoyments. Who enjoys their given enjoyments and has not given to them, he is a thief. The good who eat what is left from the sacrifice are released from all sin. But evil are they and enjoy sin who cook the food for their own sake. From food, creatures come into being. From rain is the birth of food. From sacrifice comes into being the rain. Sacrifice is born of work. Work know to be born of Brahman. Brahman is born of the immutable. Therefore is the all-pervading Brahman established in the sacrifice. He who follows not here the wheel, thus set in movement, evil is his being. Sensual is his delight, in vain, O Partha, that man lives. Inverted comma close. Having thus stated the necessity of sacrifice, we shall see hereafter in what sense we may understand a passage which seems at first sight to convey only a traditional theory of ritualism and the necessity of the ceremonial offering. Krishna proceeds to state the superiority of the spiritual man to work. Again, quote from Gita, the shloka, 3rd chapter, 17-18. But the man whose delight is in the self and who is satisfied with the enjoyment of the self and in the self, he is content. For him, there exists no work that needs to be done. He has no object here to be gained by action done, and none to be gained by action undone. He has no dependence on all these existences for any object to be gained.
To be gained. So we started, and it seems as though in the beginning it's only ritualism, because the word yajna is used in that sense. And normally when you speak of yajna, it is a classical ritual of a Vedic fire. And in that fire, you go on reciting mantras and throwing one by one ghee and all sorts of other elements, whatever is there. I have attended one such yajna recently, about maybe 6-7 months ago. And it goes on for 1.5 hours, and it is supposed to give results. Okay, if it is done in the right way, it gives results. So, but Srinath is saying it is not really that. There is something much more important for that. In fact, we have already come across the sacrifice chapter once earlier. Okay, and yeah, works and sacrifice, chapter 11. We have already had in the previous one, we have come across the word sacrifice. So there he explained that when the divine creates, he is creating out of in one, he is creating multiplicity. But this multiplicity is all connected with each other and dependent on each other. This is what man does not understand, nor the animals below. We feel that I am independent of the universe, I am independent of my friends, I am independent, my existence is independent. I may depend for something on them, okay, but I am separate from them. I may need to go to a doctor, I may need to go to a tailor, I may need to go to the shop for purchasing fruits, but I'm separate from them. This is not true. There is absolutely a connectedness and each one depends upon the other. That is the basic stand which we have to understand to get the concept of sacrifice. So, if you are dependent on everybody and everybody is dependent on everybody else, there is a huge connectedness, the oneness in multiplicity. This is a concept which is even science is recognizing now. Okay, it's very interesting, but the oneness, the homogeneity is there even in the multiplicity, apparent multiplicity. So this is the concept of the sacrifice and how it works. We again go back, the basic, Sam is going to explain, but we might as well summarize what we have learned about it earlier. If you only have relations with others and give, then only you get. This is the basic stuff. And this, the Marwadis of Rajasthan understand very well, okay? Because on their on their money safe, okay, the safe is there, and on that one side they write Shubh, and other side they write Labh. So Labha and Shubh are always connected to each other. You have to give to get. That's very obvious. In fact, it is absolutely true even at the lowest level. If I go to a shop and I want to buy a watch, I can get the watch only if I give money. So it starts even from that very low level. Okay, but this dependence we normally don't think. And if we only want to take and not give, then the Gita is saying you are a thief. So this is the actual meaning of sacrifice. And we have those famous 4 lines in Sanskrit. Okay, we might as well repeat them here because that is the basic idea of the sacrifice. It says, the river is flowing for the benefit of others. It is not drinking its own water. The trees are giving fruits for the benefit of others, not for itself. It doesn't eat the fruits itself. And the cow is giving milk, it doesn't drink its own milk, it's for others. So, this is the Paropakaraya phalanti vriksha. Paropakaraya vahanti nadya. Paropakaraya duhanti gava. So therefore, tasmat shariram paropakararthamidam shariram. Paropakararthamidam shariram. Your whole body also and your being is for the benefit of others. This is the basic truth on which sacrifice is based. The more you give yourself fully to the divine gives himself to you more. And this, as I said, it starts even at the lowest level. Okay? This is the concept of sacrifice, but it is used, it has to be understood in the spiritual sense. The more you give yourself to the divine, the more he will give to you. Not in the sense of a commerce, but in the sense that the more you give yourself, you are building a bridge between yourself and the divine. And the more you give yourself, that bridge and the channel is vaster. So it becomes more easy for the divine to pour everything through a wide channel and not a narrow channel. It's like the 1G, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G in phone communication. The wider the communication, the quicker is the response you get from the internet. Okay? Exactly in the same way. So, with this introduction, let's start reading what he's saying. The first part is very easy. The second paragraph will say what he has to say. The Gita's theory of sacrifice is stated in two separate passages. One we find in the 3rd chapter, another in the 4th. Okay, so these are the 2 paragraphs. The first one is chapter chapter 3, verse 9 to 15, and in chapter 4, the verses are 23 to 33. This is where the sacrifice is discussed in detail. Chapter 3, verse 9 to 15, and chapter 4, 23 to 33. 10 verses, and other one also about 7 verses. So the first gives it in language which might, taken itself, seem to be speaking only of the ceremonial sacrifice. Okay, the sacrifice. If you remember, I think many of you would not remember, but I remember in the street which is behind the school. Okay, in the PED, where the PED is there, because rain was not coming for a long time. There's a very dry spell. So the Ganesh temple organized a Vedic ritual. So they built a whole altar with temporary bricks, and they put a small, about the size of my screen, TV screen, about 10 inches by 10 inches, 10 inches by 12 inches. And then they had a fire ceremony and went on for quite long. Okay, it goes on. And they were asking for rain. So this is the sacrifice that they did. So they got the, so they're using the word ceremonial sacrifice. Okay, it's purely a physical thing, and you are asking for something. It seems to be a ceremonial sacrifice. The second, in chapter 4, interpreting that into the sense of a larger philosophical symbolism, transforms at once its whole significance and raises it to a plane of high psychological and spiritual truth. So in chapter 3, what seems to be merely a physical ritual turns out to have a deep spiritual meaning. We have discussed, before we started this, we have discussed briefly what that spiritual meaning is. Okay? So, of course, very briefly we have discussed. So, any of you want to see these passages, I have given you the references. Okay? Chapter 3, 9 to 15, and chapter 4, 23 to 33. The second, interpreting that into the sense of a large philosophical symbolism, transforms at once its whole significance and raises it to a plane of high psychological and spiritual truth. So psychological also, not only spiritual but psychological, even material, it has a sense. With sacrifice, the Lord of creatures of old created creatures and said, by this shall you bring forth fruits or offerings, let this be your milker of desires. So when you do sacrifice, your desires will be fulfilled. Let this be your milker of desires. Fostered by this. Foster means nourish, make grow up, increase. Foster by this the gods, and let the gods foster you. It's a transaction, it's a spiritual transaction between, it can also be a material transaction, as I said. But this is it. You give to the gods and the gods also give you. The more you give to the gods, and the gods will give you. So note the word gods. They are even lower creatures. There are gods in the vital plane, there are gods in the mental plane. Don't interpret God, the English word God, with the divine. That's different. These gods are semi-divine creatures. For instance, the gods, Indra, Varuna, Shashanka, all these are all gods. They are not fully divine, nor are they fully human. Okay? They have certain powers, and they remain in all these spiritual planes of consciousness. Let the gods foster you. Fostering each other, you shall attain to the supreme good. Fostered by sacrifice, the gods shall give you your desired enjoyments. Okay? This is what the Gita, somebody is telling about the Gita. Enjoyments. Who enjoys their given enjoyments and has not given to them, he is a thief. So he is only wanting to take, but not give. So the good who eat what is left from the sacrifice are released from all sin. You give, and whatever remains you are taking, it's a symbolic thing. Okay? But evil are they and enjoy sin who cook the food for their own sake. So the image is continued. You are cooking, and what you have cooked, you share with the others. This is the reason why you will see many people, when they are eating, often in the pavements and all that, they give something always to the animals, whether birds or crows or dogs. This is the act of oneness with life all around you. From food, creatures come into being. So now there's a sequence, a very interesting sequence, and it's also symbolic, but it's also maybe a little bit real also in the physical world. So from food, creatures come into being. That's very obvious. From rain is the birth of food. It's going backwards. From sacrifice comes into being the rain. So rain is coming down from heaven, and when you are giving to heaven, you get also back in the form of rain. And sacrifice is born of work. In other words, it all comes down to the action. And what is his work? Because he's going up. So the divine is working. Okay. So you can apply the same reverse way also. But this is he's going up from food from the lower levels to rain and birth of food, from sacrifice, and finally you have work, karma. Work known to be born of Brahman. Brahman is born of the immutable. Now note that. There is a difference between Brahman and immutable. Immutable is the supreme divine, and Brahman is the consciousness which you can experience in the spiritual planes, even in the higher mind. It's the consciousness of the self. Okay, the self is not the highest, it's in level 2. And the absolute immutable is level 3. Okay? Therefore, is the all-pervading Brahman established in the sacrifice. So when you are sacrificing, you may be sacrificing to lesser gods, you may be sacrificing to Ganesh, you may be sacrificing to others, but ultimately it's the Brahman who stands behind and receives all. He who follows not here the wheel thus set in movement, evil is his being, sensual is his delight, in vain, O Partha, that man lives. So if your life gets meaning when you share what you have with others. Otherwise you are a selfish man and you only want to take what you have, and then your life is worthless, it has no value. Having just stated the necessity of sacrifice, we shall see hereafter in what sense we may understand a passage which seems at first sight to convey only a traditional theory of ritualism and the necessity of the ceremonial offering. Krishna proceeds to state the superiority of the spiritual man to words. This also raises many questions, okay? Because working, on the other hand, you are supposed to work. So this is a question that is dealt with in the Gita quite a lot. Arjuna is confused. He says the spiritual man of knowledge is superior to the other. Then finally he says, but you must do work also. So Arjuna is very confused. He says, you are asking me to be immutable, and again you are asking me to be working. How to explain this? Then he explains very clearly that work means the immutability is not in the physical world. The immutability is in the consciousness. Work you have to continue. But the immutability that is being asked is not in the physical. Don't stop working. That's not the immutability. It's a consciousness that has become absolutely calm and quiet and immutable. That is the explanation. Okay, but that we'll see in the Gita. Krishna proceeds to state the superiority of the spiritual man to words. The spiritual man is one who is absolutely calm and quiet in his being, but he may continue to work, or he may not, depending on the path he is following. But the man whose delight is in the self and who is satisfied with the enjoyment of the self, and in the self he is content, for him there exists no work that needs to be done. You don't need to do. Okay, that's what the Gita is saying. He has no object here to be gained by action done, and none to be gained by action undone. Okay? So this is also, all these things is there in the chapter 3, verse 17 to 18. आत्मनि एव च सन्तुष्ट तस्य कार्यं न विद्यते नैव तस्य कृतो नार्थो न न अकृतेन इह कश्चन. Neither he has to do something, nor he should be, there's nothing not to be done, and there's also both. Okay, this is what he said. He has no object to be gained by action done, and none to be gained by action undone. He is absolutely calm and quiet and doesn't depend on anything. He has no dependence on all the existences for any object to be gained. This is the explanation. This is the condition of the self. When you are in the Brahman consciousness, you are absolutely detached from your body, mind, life, detached from the whole world. It's called the transcendent. And you don't depend on anything at all. You are happy in yourself and by the self. Okay, that's what he's saying. Now, so we are discussing the this is discussed in great detail, Vedist and Vedantist. The Vedist is one who is doing the sacrifice, the ritual, but with a very clear intention in the physical world. He wants enjoyments and success. He wants children, he wants wealth, he wants success. And the Vedantist is one who depends on the knowledge aspect. Okay? He is not interested in anything, he only wants knowledge of the Brahman. So this is the next para we are going to read now. So let's read that. So Archana, the read.
Do you want me to read?
Yes, if you have the text, go ahead.
Here then are the two ideals, Vedist and Vedantist, standing as if in all their sharp original separation and opposition. On one side, the active ideal of acquiring enjoyments here and the highest good beyond by sacrifice, and the mutual dependence of the human being and the divine powers, and on the others, facing it, the austerer ideal of the liberated man who, independent in the spirit, has nothing to do with enjoyment or works or the human or the divine worlds, but exists only in the peace of the Supreme Self, joys only in the calm joy of the Brahman. The next verse creates a ground for the reconciliation between the two extremes. The secret is not inaction as soon as one turns towards the higher truth, but desireless action both before and after it is reached. The liberated man has nothing to gain by action, but nothing also to gain by inaction. And it is not at all for any personal object that he has to make his choice. Therefore, without attachment, perform ever the work that is to be done for the sake of the world, Loka Sangraha, as is made clear immediately afterwards. For by doing work without attachment, man attains the highest. For it was given by works that Janaka and the rest attained to perfection. It is true that works and sacrifice are a means of arriving at the highest good, Shreha Param Avaprasya. But there are three kinds of work that done without sacrifice for personal enjoyment, which is entirely selfish and egoistic and misses the true law and aim and utility of life. Mogam Partha Sa Jivati, that done with desire, but with sacrifice and the enjoyment only as a result of sacrifice, and therefore to the extent consecrated and sanctified and that done without desire or attachment of any kind. It is the last which brings the soul of man to the highest. Param apnoti purusha.
So let's explain the two ways of doing the sacrifice. The ritual in which you are actually wanting very, very uh, limited and physical results in the world. In fact, this is very common in India. When you go to a temple, the priest will ask you for whom you are praying. So you give the name of the person, and naturally you throw some money into his plate. That is inevitable. And then he is the priest. He is the go-between between the divine and you. Not the divine, but the lesser gods. Okay, it could be Ganesha, it could be other gods, it could be anybody else. Okay, it could be even Kubera. Okay, Kubera is the god of wealth. Okay? So you ask these creatures for lesser things, and it is often given to you also. If it is done in the right way, it has a benefit. But remember, with your desire, when you are asking for the divine may give it to you, but you will see that what you are asking for is full of problems and dangers. Okay. The other day in the another class, we were discussing this, and I will repeat what I said because it's very interesting. So, suppose I want wealth. So you ask for wealth and you give some donation also, and you may get the wealth. Okay, you may succeed in your business. But then what happens? You have got what you wanted. What have you got? Wealth. But that wealth will start attracting all sorts of other forces which you will not be very happy about. Okay? There will be thieves who will come to your house. There will be people who are coming for chada. They want donations. They'll come to you. And in Bengal, if you don't give the donation, they'll burn down your house. Okay. All these type of things happen in the localities. So it may be happening elsewhere also. But when you ask for something which is not the divine and physical things, you may get. But along with that will come 100,000 problems also. This is very interesting because if you see, okay, it's a very interesting thing. Everything that is there in the physical world attracts certain forces. Wealth will attract all wrong forces. Okay? It's very interesting. Just put 3 grains of sugar on your table and you will see, at least in my house it's like that, within minutes, not hours, ants will come and take it. So everything has attraction. If you see a fishing boat in the sea and it is going sailing and it's caught some fish, there will be a huge line of birds following that boat. This is the problem, that everything in the physical world attracts other forces which are not always very congenial to you. Okay, so you have to ask the right things. So this is the Vedist. So they do the sacrifice, but they are asking for enjoyments. And the Vedantist is not asking for enjoyments or anything. He is asking only for knowledge of the divine. So I read each sentence. We'll have just time to finish this para, I think, today. Here then are the two ideals, Vedist and Vedantist. The Vedas are full of mantras for getting what you want. Okay? There is even a mantra for recovering lost articles. You may believe it or not. If you have lost articles, if you do that mantra, recite that mantra, really with your sincerely and probably, I have no idea whether it will succeed or not, but it's supposed to succeed. Okay? So anyway, so here are the two ideals, Vedist and Vedantist. I have a feeling that what you ask for also is often given to you because when the rain was short, I told you, mother made us do a drill in the playground. Okay? She, I think, is symbol of the water. She made some children, about 1 dozen children or less, walk along that symbol, okay, and go on reciting a shloka. So that was absolutely not pouring ghee into fire, but doing it in a physical way. Okay, asking for rain. she made them do, and every 10 steps they were stopping and reciting, rain, 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 we want the rain. Because it is 5 years, I think there was no rain in Pondicherry, something like that. So it does have an effect. But we are asking for very limited things. Right? Here then are the two ideals, Vedist and Vedantist. And it is Vedism that the Gita criticizes. Vedists and Vedantists, standing as if in all their sharp original separation and opposition, on one side, the active ideal of acquiring enjoyments here in the physical world, and the highest good beyond by sacrifice, and the mutual dependence of the human being and the divine powers, the gods. And on the other side, facing it, the austerer ideal of the liberated man who, independent in the spirit, has nothing to do with enjoyment or works or the human or the divine worlds, but exists only in the peace of the Supreme Self, joys only in the calm joy of the Brahman. So now, two things here. The Gita is saying that he has nothing to do with enjoyment in the physical world. But note interestingly that there is nothing wrong with enjoyment in the physical world. Okay? Although the Gita seems to be saying the opposite, it doesn't really mean that. It means that you can enjoy fully in the physical world, but in what condition? Without attachment, without desire, without ego. Then enjoyment is fully justified. After all, the divine also is enjoying. Enjoyment is a divine element. Why should you not enjoy? It's better to be happy than to be sorry. Okay. Then another question of grammar. Sriyanga dares to use joy, which is a noun, he is using as a verb here. Joy is only. You're not saying enjoys. Joy is only in the. And yesterday we were reading something else, and Sriyanga said negatives the something or other. Negatives, using as a verb. It's an adjective. Here it's a noun he is using as a verb, and you will find plenty of this in Savitri also. You will see that he's using nouns as verbs and verbs as nouns and adjectives as nouns sometimes. That is very common. No? So the flexibility of the language in Sriyanga is really something to enjoy. Okay. I'm reading the next. The next verse is create a ground for the reconciliation between the two extremes. The secret is not inaction as soon as one turns towards the higher truth, but a desireless action, both before and after it is reached. So what you have to do is desireless action. Before, if you do desireless action, it's karma yoga. And afterwards also, if you desire, then you are working for the divine. Okay? The liberated man has nothing to gain by action. He's got everything already, the liberated man. So, but nothing also to gain by inaction. He is not attached to nothing, neither action nor inaction. And it is not at all for any personal object that he has to make his choice. Therefore, if it's a personal object, there's ego, and the liberated man doesn't have an ego. So it's very clear. Okay? So, therefore, without attachment, perform ever the work that is to be done for the sake of the world, loka sangraha, holding the laws of the world together. Okay? Non-self-centered, unselfish work. That is what it means. As is made clear immediately afterwards. For by doing work without attachment, man attains to the highest, nishkama karma. For it was even by works that Janaka and the rest attained to perfection. Now, this is a very interesting thing. Janaka is mentioned here. In other words, the Gita has been written at that time. Already Janaka was there. It's a question of the time element, if you want to fix the time. So, and this Gita is here in the Mahabharata. They may have been temporary. Ramayana and Mahabharata may have been temporary. Contemporaries also. Or you could also think that they are two separate, one earlier, one later. It is for Janaka, by the way, Sita's father was considered the ideal Karma Yogi. He is a king and he is surrounded by wealth and splendor. He has nothing lacking, and yet he is a Karma Yogi. He is usually the example of Janaka is given as the perfect Karma Yogi. Okay? So, it is true that works and sacrifice are a means of arriving at the highest good. Shreya Param Avapsyatha. Avapsyatha, do get the best, the supreme good. Shreya, good, the auspicious. So, do get the supreme good by action and works. But there are three kinds of works: that done without sacrifice for personal enjoyment, which is entirely selfish and egoistic and misses the true law and aim and utility of life. Moham Partha Sajivati. His life is in vain, absolutely meaningless life, if he wants to enjoy for himself. The second one, that done with desire, but with sacrifice, and the enjoyment only as a result of sacrifice, and therefore to that extent consecrated and sanctified. This is the second one. You are doing it for your own enjoyment, but you are giving something. So that's the second one. Okay? You are giving, you are offering, you are making a sacrifice in the. Those who go to Tirupati and put something in the Hindu, hundi, they are of this quality, second quality. Okay, you may get what you want, and that done, the last one, that done without desire and attachment of any kind. It is this last which brings the soul of man to the highest. Param apnoti purusha. So this is the highest. When you do works without desire, without attachment, without love. So usually the liberated man does not want to have any action in the physical world. But Sremda is saying, why not? Why don't you become an instrument of the divine? Get liberation and come back into this physical world. But this time you are not an ignorant man. You are a man liberated, and you are not prisoner of body, mind, life. But you can do work for the divine because you are now a fit instrument. That's what is Sriram knows. One more step ahead. So that is the Gita is giving three. The one who does works with desire and only for himself. The second one who gives sacrifice, does sacrifice, but wants also only for his own enjoyment. And the third one who does no enjoyment at all. He is just giving fully himself, and he does work without any attachment, desire. Sremdo adds the fourth. He says, do get liberated, but do work. Come down to the physical world and do it to the divine. So, okay, we stop here today. We have,
Can I ask a question?
yes, please. Go ahead.
When the Ganesha temple priest
Yes.
did the yagna, then did it rain?
It must have. I don't remember, but it must have. Because even physically, after 5 years of drought, rain is bound to come at some time or other. But frankly, I don't remember. But it must have rained. But it may not have rained cats and dogs, but it must have something. I don't. Somebody may remember, but I don't remember. But I'm sure it did. How can mother's sacrifice not be successful? It can't be. It has to succeed.
Merci beaucoup.
Okay. Au revoir, everybody. Have a nice day.
Au revoir. Bonne journée, Rangada.
Bonne journée.
Au revoir, Rangada. Au revoir, Gita.
Au revoir.
Au
Thank
revoir.
you, Rangada. Thank you, Prabhupada.
Au revoir and happy day for everybody. I'm cutting.
Thank you, Rangada.
Okay.